Hello, everybody, and welcome into our webinar for today. It's Shelter 2.0, and I would like to thank you for coming to NACA's Leading Conversations series. This will be our second month. This is a series that is designed to bring industry experts together every month to discuss a variety of very critical topics that drive progress in animal care and control. Our goal is to provide insights, strategies, innovative solutions that can help you in the field, in the shelter, and beyond. This webinar is a listen only, meaning your microphone is going to be muted to minimize the background noise. The session will be available recorded in the NACA's member resources. If you are not a NACA member yet, this is a great opportunity to access the discounted training, exclusive resources, and a network of professionals in the field. I'll drop a link in the chat if you'd like to learn more. We encourage in participation though. If you have any questions for our speaker, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We will do our best to address as many of these Q&As at the end of the portion and the end of the session. If we don't get to your question, don't worry, we will have the contact information for our expert speakers so you can follow up with them directly. While I'm continuing with the introductions, if everybody could go ahead and drop one word in the chat that comes to mind whenever you think of technology. This is to kind of get a feel of how you feel about it. Maybe it's empowered or frustrated or essential or maybe confusing at times. This focus is going to be a lot on the Animals First software, but that is just one example of how technology can help streamline and improve your daily work. Whether you're building cases in the field or managing foster communications, it's kind of no matter what tech you use, we're all at the same goal, emptying the shelters and improving animal welfare. So today we have for our speakers, Chris Fitzgerald. Chris currently works as an advisor and the previous chief product officer for Animals First software. He is a certified animal welfare administrator who served as the director of animal services in Rochester, New York for nearly 24 years, where he led the implementation of various innovations and improvements to animal shelter, field services, and community support operations, pet adoptions, and lost pet reunification. Chris is a certified Care Ready Bronze and Fear-Free professional and is a former pilot director and continuing member of the Managing Executive Committee for Haas. Chris is passionate about helping finding efficiencies and solutions for animal well-being teams so that they can focus on care and support for the animals and the people in their communities. Chris is married to Nicole, who resides in Rochester, New York with their two children, Brennan and Lena, cat Arlo and dog Mikey, and Chris's eldest child, Lee, resides in New York City. Then we'll hear from Sydney. Sydney Larrabee is the Deputy Director of Animal Care of Davis County, Utah. Sydney has been in the animal welfare industry since 2017, serving a wide variety of roles from shelter tech to animal control officer to her current role. Sydney has a degree in criminal justice and has a passion for sharing information with the community on animal welfare concerns. We also have today Tori Fugate. Tori joined Shelter Animals Count as Director of Communications in September 2024, bringing over a decade of expertise in animal welfare and communications. She previously held the position of Chief Communications Officer at Kansas City Pet Project, where she played an instrumental role in shaping the organization's brand after it took over from the Kansas City, Missouri Animal Shelter in 2012. Tori currently serves on the Marketing Communications Committee for the National Animal Care and Control Association and is frequently invited to speak on various topics at both national and local conferences. All right, Chris, I will let you take it away.
Thank you. So here's us. This is the team you're going to be hearing from today. And I think the first thing to point out, if it's not obvious, is that none of us are really techie. So, we're not computer scientists. We're not software engineers. But what we do share is an affinity for data and the tools that help us to collect data, analyze data, and then report on and share data with our communities, with our organizations to assist with the work that we're all doing throughout this industry. Next slide. So a little bit about each organization. So Animal First is a tech company. Most of my career was working as an administrator for the City of Rochester's Animal Services program. Arlo's making an appearance here. The tech company that I work for, I joined last year because I was looking at other opportunities and how I might bring my experience to another position. And, I really jumped at the chance to get involved with, thinking about how much time I spent, trying to run reports and pull graphs together to either to report on something or to share with the community or to add information to our website. So I wanted to be involved in assisting with improving the products for the industry. So giving you the tools that you need. Animal Care of Davis County is a government animal services organization, and Shelter Animals Count is a database. Previously, it was national. Now, with the inclusion of Canada, I believe it's international. And so for all of you folks out there to submit your shelter and rescue statistics to be involved in that aggregate data analysis and looking at trends. It's feeding time for Arlo, apparently. Next slide, please. One more. Sorry. So the roadmap of what we're going to be discussing today, there's a lot that we can do with technology. It's evolved. Technology is constantly evolving. Just in the short time I've been with Animals First, the tech has, the product has changed, and there's been modules and tools added. There's lots that we can do in terms of improving communication, being transparent, and sharing information with our communities, and how we measure our success. So we're setting goals and then using metrics that you can use technology to help you report on and see how you're doing, and then share that success with the team and beyond. Next slide. So software in terms of shelter and rescue software really started, it was focused mostly on intakes and outcomes. We've all heard the phrase noses in, noses out. And so being able to record, how many animals are coming in, what type of animals, and then what happens to them. So that's kind of like the basis, the sort of the minimum that you would expect from technology associated with your work. There were lots of challenges over the history of our industry too, in terms of like who has access to the system. Is the field services operation part of the same organization, or is it a separate organization? Is it a different department within a larger organization? And do they have access to the system, or are they doing all of their reporting on paper that then has to be turned in to the sheltering organization? When animals are moving through the system, who has access to recording it and knowing, viewing where the animals are, making updates? So there's lots of hands that potentially maybe weren't in the pot, but could have been. And so now what we're seeing is increasingly more organizations and more multi-agency projects are including all of the areas of the operation in the use of their technology, so that there's real-time information entry and sharing. And then not only within the organization and across departments, but then communicating with those external stakeholders like volunteers and foster caregivers who are integral to our work. Next slide. So beyond just having the noses in, noses out, just your admissions, your intakes, and your outcomes, most software now is going to include modules and features that allow for tracking field services and community support cases, the medical care that's provided for animals in your system, lost pet reunification and supported self-rehoming. Also managing behavioral records like you do with your medical records. And a lot of organizations are also incorporating their work with community cats into their record keeping. So the technology is advancing and evolving to be able to accommodate those things. But and for those of you that were on at the beginning, one of the words I put into the chat was efficiency, and part of the role that technology is playing is certainly making us more efficient about what it is that we're doing in every aspect of the operation. So ensuring that that information can be entered simply, quickly, having an efficient entry process, simplifying reporting, so that folks don't have to toil away with a system. Or another thing that is common in with all software is what's called consumption gap, where there's a lot more functionality to the system than what users actually are comfortable or are aware of. And so ensuring that folks know everything that it's capable of, because all of those features are going to be designed to help aid the work. Next slide. So one of the primary uses of technology then in our industry is looking at our data and using it to help monitor our work, improve outcomes. So here's an example of a graph that shows intakes for Davis County, Utah, over the calendar year 2024. So being able to use your technology to graphically view it and then filter based on intake or species. So this is set up right now to show you the distribution by intake types, but you could click on species and it would show you the breakdown by different species. So you can use these graphs then to look for the trends when you have historic periods where you're expecting high intake. Are you able to then get a foster on deck program or adopted on deck program in place in anticipation of that? For periods of time when adoptions are historically low, you could put time, effort into the lead up to that, and expanding your marketing efforts so that you're trying to address those periods and remove what could be problem time, low adoptions or high intakes where you don't have any other options. You can also use the data and looking at trends to review your field services data, like what types of cases are coming in and where. And so then you're looking at your resources and how you assign personnel or how you allocate resources maybe to one geographic area where you're getting high incidence of a certain type of incident. Similar to that with community support requests. If you're getting lots of requests for vaccinations in particular neighborhoods, then you can allocate your resources to having focused engagement and clinic work out in the communities where that need is the greatest. Also looking at things like the length of stay and are there specific species, ages, sizes of animals, or a stage in the process where the length of stay is longer, so that you're then able to be aware of and address those bottlenecks. Sid, this is your slide, your data. Did you want to elaborate on it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I love, Chris, that you said that the word that you think of when you think of technology is efficiency, because that's very much where I'm at as well. As he mentioned, this is our data from last year for my organization, and we are constantly using data to drive our organizational decisions. Whether we're really trying to look at, how can we be the most effective while also being the most efficient? And the software really helps us with that. So from this data, as you can see, we noted that 76% of our population is stray. So we know that throughout the year, 76 or so percent of our population is going to be completely unpredictable as to when it comes in, where it comes from, what's going on. But with these graphs, we can see what those trends look like. So we can note that, as many organizations are, we are typically a little bit slower in the winter time. And so what can we do to try and implement programs that help us out in the summer when our population is a little bit higher? On the field side of things, we were also locating areas with that higher stray concentration. We're going to see a chart in a minute that kind of talks about the stray areas, but focusing our ACO efforts based on that data for additional education, extra patrols in that area to try and negate some of those stray animals coming in those peak times, we found to be very helpful. Additionally, because 70% or more of our intakes are strays, we decided to start a program to offer free microchips, and we would target the areas where these strays were coming from, make sure that animals that were walking back out the door did have a microchip going out with them, and making that really accessible to the community. I would just like to note, first off, as we're starting to look at these charts, that having software that is user-friendly and easy to interpret for anyone, whether it's somebody within your organization or somebody outside of it, is really, really important. Showing this type of data chart to anyone and allowing them to have a basic understanding of what they're seeing without any context is a really powerful tool. A number alone might not mean much to somebody, but when they see, oh my goodness, it spikes in this area and goes pretty low in that area, it's a lot more tactful for them and appealing for them to understand.
Thanks,
Next
Sid.
slide.
So here's a example of where I used data to help and technology to help in advocating for additional positions when I was with Rochester Animal Services. So the graphs show the sources of animals coming in, the admissions coming in year over year, and in 2022, the stray or lost pets represented 73% of our intake. So not very not dissimilar from what Davis County was seeing percentage wise. And then owner surrenders were, I think it was 24%. But when I showed those graphs and then showed the table of organization and talked about what the roles of the different titles were, it was real obvious that there was a lot of the main focus for staffing was on bringing animals in and caring for them while they were with us. Comparatively less was allocated towards preventing unnecessary institutionalization or even on ensuring that animals get moved through the system quickly and get placed. So the highlighted title is really the only title that was 100% focused on community engagement work, supporting people and pets staying together. We had an assistant supervisor of animal control position that was the de facto coordinator for that program, but not 100% of their time was focused on that. And then even in terms of placements, our client specialists, and we had 3 full-time as of fiscal year 23, there were those were our primary adoption counselors, but they had other duties too, including processing walk-in admissions for owner surrenders or found pets, issuing dog licenses, signing people up for services and answering phones. So I use these to help advocate for additional positions to try and create some more balance so that we're trying to address some of the root cause of what animals are showing up in the system. Next slide.
Forgot to unmute
So this is
myself.
another one of Sid's slides.
Yep. So once again, this is some additional data from last year for animal care of Davis County. And once again, this is just really guiding us on our resource allocation and our strategy for implementing anything that we're looking at. So we know that 44% of our animal care cases involve strays. So we know that we kind of need to probably devote more of our resources to getting lost pets home than maybe to other types of cases. I think a lot of the time we think of animal control, you think of stray and you think of bites. Bites is, a little bit down there on the chart for us, and we still want to put an emphasis on education for bite prevention. But to help drive our organization and help lower our intakes and that sort of thing, we really need to focus some education in that area. And we also noted that because strays take up a significant amount of our officers' time, we wanted to find some efficiencies in that and how we could make those calls faster. So this helped guide our implementation of 2 of our programs, one of which was a Finder to Foster program. This came from that data that you may be familiar with. It's from Haas that stated that 75% of loose dogs are found less than a mile from their home. And I think it's like 42% or something, or 600 feet away. It's the next door neighbor. So we found ourselves, considering why are we taking the animal farther away from the home? And can we either encourage the finder to have some, say or not say, but have some ability to help find that owner for us? And additionally, can we give our animal control officers more time to stay in that area and actually knock on doors or, hang flyers and kind of find the owner within that vicinity? We also were able to streamline some of our other call types, such as specifically nuisance barking complaints, which is a pretty significant portion of those nuisance calls that you see on this chart, in order to give our officers more time to work on reuniting those stray animals and diverting that shelter intake. Next slide. These maps are really, really excellent for us. This is particularly in Animals First software, but there are quite a few, I believe, mapping programs that will do similar things. Using the location data to map your field services, your community support activities, and then on the right-hand side here, the lost and found can be very applicable in many, many ways. We found that if we had an area with a high amount of stray animals in one period of time, that's where we're going to focus our microchip clinics or our vaccination clinics. We're going to really target education in those areas and see if we can solve some of the issues that residence is having to try and lower those numbers down. For community support, we can look at, where can we send our partner organizations out for food pantries? Who in the community has the most need? Are we getting calls from people that are requesting food highly in these areas? And then particularly, somebody had asked the question of what percentage of our 74% of strays was cats, and it's 69%. So most of our animals that are coming in are those cats. And so we're looking at where the intake of community cats and kittens is coming from, and have we focused our trapping efforts there, doing a more targeted approach to the TNR program with our community cat officer, rather than just kind of sporadic trapping throughout the county. As I mentioned with the lost and found, this is a really easy way for our officers or our front office staff to check if markers overlap. So the three colors here are showing you lost animals that have been reported, found animals that have been reported, and then animals that we have picked up as stray and are actually in our facility. So this is a very quick reference tool for our officers to say, hey, these pins kind of overlap. Maybe I should check and see if that animal is the same one that I just picked up. So again, this is just technology allowing us to identify what concerns or needs our community has and where to allocate our resources. Next slide.
So in terms of technology to help you build a strong case, the screen snip here is from ASPCA, showing you different photographs that should be part of your case when you're investigating an incident, whether it's cruelty or otherwise. So certainly capturing all of the photographs of the location, the animal, the housing conditions, the housing unit, the bedding, the empty bowls, the overturned bowl, things like that. But important to note is that all of this can live in a digital record now. So it's not so much as compiling a bunch of like a hodgepodge of film. What's film? I'm talking to you from Rochester, the home of Kodak, and sadly, some of you probably have never used film. But so having a digital record, then you've got digital photographs that can be entered right into the record that you're building for each case. Most of my time with the city of Rochester, we were in the Rochester Police Department, and it was really early on in my tenure that the police department emphasized the importance of documenting everything that our team did, whether at the shelter or out in the field. So all of the who, what, where, when, why, you can put all of that into your system. So who was involved, all of the people involved, whether it's a victim, a suspect, a witness, the pet owner, other bystanders, people with knowledge. What was the alleged incident? Where did it happen? When did it happen? What was the circumstance that brought you there? Why are you there? And then what steps did you take to investigate it? And being able to build that digital record and compile the case with the maps and all the information related to the animal and everybody else involved is essential. Next slide. Sid, you were going to talk about some specific case.
Absolutely. So this is an example of a case that is in our software. Something that Chris also mentioned earlier on was that a lot of times agencies will have software, but it isn't necessarily one that their animal control team has access to. And we found it to be very important for our teams to kind of be cohesive in that and everybody have access to what they need to see, whether it's the shelter team that's looking at the history of a dog to know more and understand more about its behavior when it reaches the shelter, or the officer team and the dispatchers just being able to be cohesive. So this particular case is just kind of an example and an overview of what we're using on a day-to-day basis, where we have the notes from both dispatch and the officers. We've got information and mapping for where this case is taking place, and then they can add in contact statements, animals that are associated, because time happens where it may be just one animal, but you may have 15 or 16 if you're dealing with a case with a hoarding situation or something. And then any citations and files that are attached are all just in the same place and really easy for anyone on our team to access. We have about 35 members on our team, including shelter staff, support staff, and all of them have access to our program so that we can all be on the same page. If you'll go to the next slide, we will look a little bit closer at the contacts portion of it. This is something that we have found really, really useful for us when we are talking about looking through a case that's pretty substantial, and we're looking at notes that reference different people at different times, and maybe the officer that is annotating this didn't actually say, this is the animal owner, this is the animal owner every single time. So we're able to have a quick reference where we can go to this contacts tab and say, hey, this is the animal owner. Every time you see him referenced, that's his association with this case. Once again, having everything in one place just allows seamless communication between our dispatch and our field staff. We can either party can enter the case info, link new people. It doesn't just have to be all on the ACO. The dispatch can really help them out with that. Keeps everything in order and just makes it so that it's just right there and simple. Chris?
Yeah, the other thing I was going to point out on this on the left side of the screen is basically your case entry form can be customized. So this is just an example of how it can be customized. But about midway down, it says case category. And so in conversations that I've had with the team from NACA and from Shelter Animals Count, talking about the future standardization of field services data, similar to the discussions about standardizing animal shelter, like intake types and subtypes, is the preliminary recommendation is to use 4 main buckets: welfare, public safety, quality of life, and other. So being able to flag your cases as one of those, and then drilling further down into it. If you go to the next slide, I believe. Yeah, so then you could create, what right now would be essentially customized lists for what the event types are, subtypes, and hopefully we'll have recommendations coming out from NACA and Shelter Animals Count in the future on what we recommend folks use, so that when you're sharing your data with Shelter Animals Count, then we're looking at apples to apples comparisons and looking at trends. And then the far right, you see the ultimate disposition. And similarly, we could come up with hopefully a standardized list of what the outcomes could be. What I'm showing here is a series of check boxes so that there could be multiple outcomes. For instance, maybe a citation was issued and the animal was returned to its home, right? So, being able to gather enough information, enough detail, but also look at it throughout this kind of like tiered approach of different categories, event types, subtypes, and then, having a variety of different final dispositions. Next slide. So early on, I said, that the systems you basically track the noses in, noses out. So your software is going to be able to accommodate the animal record, and the that's the noses in part of it. The noses out would be the final outcome for the animal. But when the animal's in your system, being able to keep track of things that are happening to the animal, it's medical. It's if there's notes that are added, that your team can add notes, and then other team members can see those notes. In Animals First, we use custom tags, and so using those as character to highlight characteristics. So for this dog, Kurt, we know that Kurt was good with dogs, good with cats, good with kids. So that's one example of using custom tags. You can also see that Kurt is in foster care, and you can see that there are alerts on Kurt's record that there's a request for care. So someone saw something about Kurt that his weight was low, so it says please weigh. So that it's called right out. There's another banner alert that he's shy around people. So these could be cautionary, or they could be some other sort of notification that you want to highlight for the animal. And it's also worth noting here that you see the people that are associated with the animal. So, you might have an owner that brought in an animal that's surrendered, or a finder that's turning in a found pet. You might have a foster parent. So here we see the foster parent. And so the people that are associated with an animal will be tied to that animal record. And later you'll see the inverse for the people records. Let's go to the next slide. So if you drill into the animal record further, you see the medical. So recording everything that's happened with the animal, all the medical activities. If there's exams, the exam findings, diagnostic test results, any vaccinations, surgeries, medications that the animal's been on. Being able to record multiple weights. So there might be an initial weight at intake, and then tracking that animal's weight over time, particularly helpful for neonates and also for cases that might involve emaciated animals. And then on the right, you see an example of an animal that's been assigned meds. It's assigned doxy twice a day. And so the system sets up essentially a task list so that your team can be notified that there are meds to be given and on what schedule. So,
Yeah, for Davis, the charts in these medical fields has been really, really helpful for us. As mentioned, the weight monitoring is especially important for kitten fosters and for emaciation cases, and gives a clear timeline of how they're improving. For fosters specifically, some foster parents may weigh their kittens daily and see that they went from 300 grams to 290 grams and may not think that that's that large of a change. But when they see it on a graph overall, they realize the significance in relation to how that kitten has been growing prior. And then especially for those emaciation cases, I think anytime if you are having to bring something to court, if you can have a really strong visual like this, that can be really, really helpful. Once again, if you've got a picture that is easy to interpret by anybody, they don't have to have any sort of indication of, well, what's the normal weight range for this breed of dog? If they can just see a chart that says, hey, they came in at this weight, they climbed up to this weight, that's really easy for anyone to interpret and can help your cases.
thanks, Sid. Next slide. So I mentioned on the animal slide that you can see all the people associated with every animal. Same with people. If you've got a person in your system, you've got the information about that person. So here we know that this person is a foster caregiver. They've been assigned permissions in the foster portal, foster app, which I'll show you in a slide or two. If they were an adopter, they'll have the adoption application there. Any notes and files that are associated with the person. The foster report, because they're a foster caregiver, there'll be a history of all of the foster placements. But then any animals that are associated with the person. So they could be pending adoption requests. So this person, Marilyn, so one of my colleagues at Animals First, has 2 pending adoption requests. She's requested to adopt two animals that are current and pending. The previous adoption requests are showing any animals currently in foster care, animals that a person has dropped off, could be their pets that they adopted from you are listed, but they could also be animals that they've just communicated to you that they have. This could be maybe Marilyn is a community support client that comes to the food pantry, and Stimpy could be one of the animals that we've provided food for. So you can record the same kind of detailed record about the animals for all of those cases. And the person will always be tied to the animal, and the animals will always be tied to those people. You see some other examples of tags here that can be used. So this person can have a tag, and you can see how that could be helpful for matchmaking. If we get in a litter of neonates and we know that we need to find someone who's good with bottle babies, and we filter our people list for good with bottle babies, we can identify the folks that we're going to reach out to instead of doing a broad scale email blast to everyone. Next slide. So similar to field services cases, being able to use technology and software to help you with your support work is critical too. So being able to keep track of things, so you know what your team's doing, being able to report on what you're doing, be able to see your progress towards goals, being able to share that with your administration and with your community to demonstrate impact is important. So in our system, it's really set up similar to case entries in field services, but without the enforcement part of it. So you'd be gathering the information on the person involved, where they live, what their what type of support or resource they're looking for, and any kind of notes that you add for your interactions with them, files, if there's some sort of like a paper form that they fill out or something, you could have those uploaded to the file, and then all of the animals that are associated with that person. So in this example, Jeremy has 3 animals that are associated with the food pantry support case. On the right side, you see an example of what might be your request form that could be part of an online form that you build, or part of the case entry that you're using for your team's using for creating a support case. And what I've shown here, again, this is customizable, like virtually everything in our system. But what I've shown here is what should then, it should correlate with what you're hearing from your admissions team, from owner surrenders, from intake triage, from adoption returns, about what those reasons that they're unable to keep their pet or why they were looking for support, so that you're able to allocate the appropriate resources and staffing to addressing those things. So your support program should correlate with, if not mirror, what you're hearing from the community in terms of why they're unable to keep their pets. Next slide. So there's loads of ways that technology is improving communication. Certainly having, most people on our teams have access to smartphones, so they're able to communicate with each other through phone calls and texts throughout the day, all work related, I'm sure. And but so also, like Sid and I both mentioned, it's having the whole team have access to the system. So based on roles and permissions, they might have different levels of access of what they can view and or edit. But if your field services folks create an animal record for an animal they're bringing in, that animal record is already there for your team that's going to be caring for the animal at the facility. So it's really improving the efficiency and the communication there. The officer can add notes and those alerts and banners like I showed, and the custom tags that can help communicate certain things about the animal, what behaviors they observed on intake, or if there's it's favoring one leg or something like that. Maybe it's not a emergency that needs to be communicated face to face with the veterinary team, but it just seems to be limping, or something that seemed non-urgent. It's shaking its head, something like that. You put in a request for care, and that's helping communicate with the other teams within the larger organization. And then you can also use technology to help you communicate outside of the inner sanctum, if you will, to your foster parents. So some organizations are going to give access to their record management system for their foster caregivers. And they might give them varying roles, or might give certain folks specialized training so that they're able to use the system. Animals First also has a foster portal, so that foster parents can be invited to set up an account that's going to enable them to view and or edit the animal record for the animals in their care. And that's particularly helpful for, really, it's like empowering your foster caregivers to be part of the team, a part of the process of getting animals marketed for adoption and ultimately adopted. Who's going to know the animal better than the folks that are spending the day in and day out with them? So being able to update the record, update the descriptive profile of the animal as they learn more about that animal's characteristics, adding better photos of an animal in a non-shelter setting, a non-institutional type setting, and videos of the animal playing or doing funny things that can help with its marketing. And then they can also be critical to the matchmaking of the animal. So as they're learning more about the animal, that can be communicated through the portal or through the software to let the team know, the adoption team know, like what things are going to make for the best fit. Also, with communicating outside the sheltering organization, the field services organizations, there's an adoption portal that adopters can be invited to. And so being able to have them have access to an online account to process the adoption. There's an online workflow process that gets set up. So I'll show you some screenshots of that in a sec. But then also having access to their animals' records. So if they are processing through a mobile adoption, they create an account. The receipt, the application, any files, documents that you want them to have, including rabies certificates, spay-neuter certificates, are all going to be automatically showing up in the adoption portal. So then when it comes the time for them to, they're going out of town and they're leaving their dog at the boarding facility, and they're in a scramble looking for their rabies certificate or the kennel cough documentation, they're going to have access to it in their animal's record through the portal. Next slide.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sid, were you going to say something?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. So another example here of communication with fosters. On the left side of the screen, you see a snip from the software, from Animals First software. And so in this case, it's not real data, but the employee, Charles Smith, is putting a note in to ask for information from the foster parent, Chris Fitzgerald, to share information about the foster animal, Onyx. So then on the right side of the screen, this is a snip from what the foster parent would see through the portal. They're seeing that, there's a note added here for my pet, my foster pet, Onyx. And so then they respond with the information about Onyx and it shows up automatically real time in the software system. So then the the adoption team knows more about Onyx to aid in the placement of Onyx with the appropriate home. Next slide. Here's the workflow that I mentioned. So on the left here is an adoption request has been submitted by a client who's interested in adopting. So they did this through by setting up an account in the adopter portal. And so now they know that their request is being reviewed. If you give your foster parents permission to review and approve requests, then the bubble on the right, the circle is showing you that those buttons will show up there. If you don't give your foster parents permission, that won't show there, but they'll know that a request came in. So if the foster parent approves the request, or if whoever handles adoptions approves the request, then the adopter will get a notification through email and or text that the request has been approved and to go ahead and complete the contract. They get prompted to do the contract, and then they'll be prompted to go to checkout for payment and a donation prompt so they can give to the organization. Once that's complete, the adoption team will receive a notification that the checkout has been processed and to complete the outcome. So there's having a workflow process created, ensures that animals are moving through the system, but it's also supporting customer service and that your clients know what stage they're on, and so they can see that they're in the queue or that the process is moving for them. Next slide. So these next two slides, there's a reference at the bottom that comes from the ASPCA on tips to remove adoption barriers. So the left cell includes the tip, like a simplified version of the tip. You can follow that URL to look at the specific about each thing. So I'm not going to be talking about the administrative decisions and the policies to implement, but there's a tech solution that I've put in, and these are some of many possible tech solutions that can support those tips. So for instance, simplifying applications. You've heard a lot about having getting away from having long, cumbersome multi-page applications that ask a lot of questions that kind of erode public trust. So creating a short online form where you can capture basic person information, contact information, you can do that with technology. And you can build in discount codes and no-fee adoptions as options in your outcome process to facilitate that removal of that barrier if cost is a barrier. In terms of foster to adopt, you can create a tag like in our system or some sort of other label in another system or a stage where you're able to then monitor how that program is working. So if you were to pilot it, you'd be able to show, here's what we're seeing in our foster to adopt program where then you're gaining information about the animal, or it's like a trial run adoption. But being able to then, utilize the information and your data through technology and being able to query that later on. I mentioned the adoption workflow that can be helpful for customer service. There's also scheduling tools that are either built into software, to your shelter software, or could be standalone products that organizations are using. Pardon me. And then in terms of matchmaking and counseling, so being able to use things like custom fields or custom tags to highlight specific things and then create better matching. So an example might be if you're talking to someone who's turning in a dog that they have that lived with cats, you might have a tag that says had positive interactions with cats. So then when you're looking for the dog for the client subsequently who comes in and says, I've got cats at home. Do you have any dogs that are good with cats? Well, you can query your animal population and see, which dogs have that tag that had positive interactions with cats. So continuing the list, the being able to have virtual meet and greets with these like virtual platforms like we're using right now, remote adoptions, and being able to process a mobile adoption through cell phones and other mobile devices can facilitate flexible and offsite adoption events. Having vouchers built right into your software can be helpful, and then potentially sending those through email or text, or putting them in a portal like we showed you with with Animals First in the adopter portal. In terms of profiles, I mentioned, empowering your foster team to help you write profiles. So certainly getting their input, whether it's in the form of notes, giving them access to the software, or using the portal like our foster app. And then we also have Chat GPT that can be turned on to aid in writing bios or profiles for animals in Animals First. And so AI can be used for that, among many other things, like helping to write a newsletter article or blog, or help you analyze data. So if you're using it for profiles, I always recommend, proofreading it, human eyes on it. There will be embellishments. There may be some inaccuracies, and oftentimes they'll use terminology that you might not use in your organization. Then your own assets of your website, your email, your social media. These are all forms of technology that are helping to enhance your marketing. I'm not going to delve much more into that, and certainly Tori can, and I hope she will. And then including the foster animals on your website. So making sure it's not just your adoptable animals or the animals that are at the shelter, but all of the foster animals, posting them on your website, and then also sending them to the adoption platforms like Adopt-a-Pet and Pet Finder. The link at the bottom of that previous slide, that was for a blog covering the same topic of removing barriers. And now I'm handing it over to Tori.
Thank you, Chris. And Sydney, that was amazing. I love seeing all the features of Animals First. It's just so cool, the technology that you've built out with that. So I'm here on behalf of Shelter Animals Count today, which I am relatively new to the team. Been with them since September, but have been a huge fan since I started in animal welfare, really. So if you are not familiar with Shelter Animals Count, we are the national database that collects data from shelters and rescues on a monthly basis. But we collect data from around 7,000 organizations throughout the country. We also collect data from Puerto Rico, from Canada now. So growing every year, and getting larger. And that is because of the amazing work that all of you are doing every single day and the data that you're collecting. And so really our role is to take the data that you provide and to aggregate that data to talk about, what is happening on a national level. So we talk about the trends that we're seeing in animal welfare. There's a lot of big questions right now. Why are we in a capacity crisis? Why are there so many animals? And with that data that we collect, we help to address some of those questions, answer them as best as we can. And like I mentioned, there's a lot of really exciting things that are, coming in the future for Shelter Animals Count. So if you go to our website, which I will put several links in the chat as I'm talking through, if you're not familiar and you want to get started, we would love for you to register to learn more. You can get that information on our website. If you're tired of entering manual data, if you're doing that on a monthly basis, and you're just like, man, I just don't want to do this anymore, we have APIs available that can automatically transfer your data. I'm actually going to go ahead and put the link for that in the chat. So that's through Animals First, Animal Shelter Manager, Pet Point, Pet Established, Shelter Love, all have automatic transfers. So if you're not a part of that, there is information there on how you can register your organization. The map that you're seeing is really, the reporting shelters that are part of SAC and rescues as well. We also understand that there's around 13,000 animal welfare organizations in the country. And so we actually built a new machine learning model that we launched in 2024 that takes the data that we've collected since 2016 through the last year and adds in, kind of fills that gap, fills the holes for all the shelters that we don't account for. It also takes into account census for the areas in which the shelters are. There's a lot of factors to that. So if you want to go to the next slide, with all of that data, we're aggregating into that machine learning model, which helps inform our data reports and our data sets that we put out. And so your data that you're providing to us really provides the bigger picture of what's happening. So we just released our 2024 annual report, which goes over a lot of the highlights for the last year, dog adoptions and dog intakes and how that broke down for the year. Transfers, what that's looking like. Cats are still having a moment in most shelters. We're still seeing that they're getting adopted at a very, very quick rate. And then we're also we also went into a webinar that went into more organizational data as well as regional data of what is happening all across the country. So those reports do come out. We do a mid-year report, and then we do an annual analysis, and we just did a webinar. So if you missed that, there is a recording of that on our website. You can go and watch that to see all of the data of what happened since last year. But we'll be sharing a lot of highlights as we go throughout the year. And you can go to the next one because I know we're running out of time. So we also have our dashboards. So these are available. They're on the public sections of our website. This is a new National Statistics Animal Welfare dashboard that we just refreshed. So you can look at data and how it has panned out from 2016 through the previous year. You can look by total intakes or community intakes, community outcomes. And that's really, the community intakes and outcomes are your total intakes minus transfers. So those animals aren't counted twice. So if you're looking for what is an actual representation of how many animals are in your community, you're going to want to look at community intakes and outcomes in that way. And you can sort by shelters, you can sort by rescues. We have several other dashboards that have been available on our website. They're currently down right now, but we will be relaunching those very, very shortly. So follow us on social media for updates on that. You can go to the next slide. We also have member exclusive dashboards that are available on the portal. So if you're an organization that contributes data to Shelter Animals Count, you will have access to these dashboards and tools that are only available in your portal for organization type comparisons. So you can compare to how you are faring with other organizations that are similar to yours in your area or nationally. And then there's several other amazing dashboards and tools that you will have access to through there. If you want to go to the next slide. We also have embeddable dashboards for your website. So if you're an organization that wants to show off your data and you want to be very transparent with your community, you can email us at info@shelteranimalscount.org and we will send you an embed code that you can put dashboards like this right on your website. It just pulls directly from your software and that data that's coming through your SAC portal every month. So this is an example from Wisconsin Humane Society, and you can see how they are utilizing our embedded dashboards on their website. So that way they're not manually having to update any information on their website. If you want to go to the next slide. And this is also helping us with their APIs that we have available now. This is helping us look at real world analysis and benefits. So we now are able to track animal level data. Which is showing us through a couple of our APIs down to what breeds are coming in, what are the sizes of animals that we're seeing, what what ages of kittens are coming in. So this is from our end of year report where we're showing that the median length of stay for dogs is increasing. And it's in fact more than double, almost doubled by every dog size since 2019, which would help explain why we are experiencing a capacity crunch that we are currently. So there's really exciting features that we are able to now, and data points that we're able to now mention because of the data that we're collecting from shelters and rescues like yours. And we just put out a blog yesterday about for World Spade Day about how many or what the percentages of animals that are altered at intake are coming in, which was really, really fascinating. So it's an exciting thing to be able to share this analysis now with everybody in the animal welfare industry and beyond. And you can go to the next one. Other resources and tools that we have available at Shelter Animals Count. So we just released our data basics workbook. If you are new to animal welfare or you have staff or maybe board members that have just come on, this is a great resource to hand to everybody to explain, why data standardization, why data is so important in our industry and why it helps tell your organization's story. So this is a really nice tool that just came out available thanks to Hill's Pet Nutrition and is part of our Data Foundation series that we just put out. We also have an animal welfare glossary that's a part of this workbook, and it's on our website as well. And it's, again, a nice resource to be able to give to somebody if you don't understand all the terms of animal welfare. This is a great resource for you. It also mentions a lot of data standardization, such as what to do with TNR cats and how to enter that data. We do have our community services database as well that you can enter data in on a monthly basis. That is a manual process, but if you're providing access or if you're providing resources to your community, such as low-cost spay-neuter, food, collars, leashes, anything like that, you can also enter that into our community services database to help inform what is happening to help provide services for pets out in the community. We are also hosting a lot of webinars this year, more blogs on data sharing and those data points. We have a YouTube channel. So if you have any tech questions, a lot of times you can go to our YouTube channel to get those. But of course, if you have any questions whatsoever, please reach out to our team. We're more than happy to assist with any of those tech questions, getting you set up and registered. We also have that portal for all of our supporting organizations who give us data for Shelter Animals Count. And you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn for more information and sign up for our email list to receive updates on all of the goings on of Shelter Animals Count. We always have a lot going on.
Great. Thanks, Tori. Just a couple more slides. So here's just showing you an example of one organization, Berkeley Humane, and how they're using their website to help communicate their impact. At the bottom, you see the metrics that are important to them to share with their community for their 6-year impact. Next slide. Our friends at Lifeline Animal Project are similarly, they're using technology to gather data on their intake and then sharing how the animal outcome distribution, what that looks like and what their life-saving rate is. Next slide. Just some other thoughts on other tangible examples of where technology is benefiting our industry. Petco Love Lost uses image recognition to help expedite lost pet reunification. Petzl is helping enhance post-adoption support. ChatGPT and other forms of AI are assisting with writing bios and other things I mentioned earlier. And then a series of integrations like microchip integration to ensure that animals are getting registered with the microchip registry by the organization that's implanting the chip, adoption site integration, rehoming site integrations, so that your team doesn't have to do manual entry. And similar to the sharing of your information with Shelter Animals Count, having those integrations in place so that the adoptable animal information gets posted to Adopt-A-Pet and Pet Finder, to Rehome by Adopt-A-Pet and Home to Home. And then the key takeaways is the last slide aside from our contact info. So in a nutshell, technology is your friend. And I'm going to conclude there, and we'll go to the next slide with our contact info. I'm sorry if we ran long.
There was just so much awesome information. Couldn't pack it all into an hour. Well, thank you, everybody. Chris, Sydney, Tori, Good Pup for hosting. I know everybody had some questions in the chat that we're not going to have time to get to, but here is the contact information if y'all want to reach out directly. Thank y'all so much. And if you want to get a hold of this recording, there's the link to join the NACA membership. It is $25 a year. We'd love to have you. And come back and see us next month for our next leading conversation. Yay. I hope everybody has a wonderful day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.